Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Kashkari. Just a few things to establish where we agree. You'd agree, obviously, that the taxpayer is entitled to know how taxpayer money is spent.
Yes.
And I assume you'd agree that shareholders would be entitled to know how shareholder money is spent.
Yes.
And of course, the biggest recipient of taxpayer money to date, one of the biggest, is AIG. And that's where the taxpayer is fronting money, and the taxpayer, in fact, is an 80% owner, correct?
Yes.
And we're providing that money in order to avert a conclusion that's been reached at Treasury and the Fed that to let AIG go down would cause systemic failure, correct?
Yes.
Now, Donald Cohn, who's the vice chair, as you know, of the Federal Reserve, says that AIG has no obligation to name the counterparties who have been paid via taxpayer money that has been transferred to AIG, correct?
I read Governor Cohn's or Vice Chair Cohn's testimony, but I don't remember that exact quote, but I defer to you, sir.
Okay. Do you agree with him?
I believe institutions such as AIG that receive extraordinary assistance have a moral obligation to disclose as much as possible to the American people. If you'll permit me to give you a thorough answer, the challenge here is, as I indicated earlier, we want to prevent a financial collapse to stabilize the system, and we want to pay back the taxpayers. And so we have to be careful that just as any business, if you force businesses to expose all of their business decisions, all of who their customers are, all of who their counterparties are, that may actually put them at a competitive disadvantage. Right, so, and then it makes it harder to pay back the taxpayers.
Yeah, I get it. So then you agree with Governor Cohn. We'll leave it to AIG to decide what information they will disclose and they won't disclose, with them making the final decision on whether that is a business interest or not, correct?
No, I believe we can work with the Fed to work with AIG and figure out, take a look from Treasury's perspective,
right, let me
and say what's appropriate to disclose.
Some of that AIG money that's to avert the systemic failure is to make certain that average Americans who have AIG insurance policy, AIG annuities, and AIG financial products and pensions don't get hammered, correct?
Yes, correct.
But some of the counterparties are eyes wide open investors, some of the largest investment banks that we used to have in this country, hedge funds, and speculators who made bets that turned out sour. Do you believe that it would be of interest to the American taxpayer to know whether their money is being used to protect those annuity holders, those insurance policy holders, those pensioners on the one hand, versus the hedge fund speculators, investment banks on the other? Just yes or no.
Well, Congressman, I'd like to provide you a thorough answer because it's important.
No, the question is a simple one. In your opinion, do you think it would be of interest to taxpayers to know whether it's the hedge funds, investment banks, speculators being assisted with their money, or annuity holders, pensioners, and insurance contract holders? And
the answer is they're all being benefited, because unfortunately there's no way we can go in to stabilize an institution and say just the policyholders are stabilized.
Why not?
Because if we did that, the other counterparties would put the firm into bankruptcy, and that would cause the whole firm to fail. That's the unfortunate choice we don't have. If we step in to support a systemic institution, all of their customers, all of their counterparties benefit, whether we like it or not.
So if the taxpayer, it's their taxpayer money, it's the shareholder money, and you believe they have a right to know how taxpayer and shareholder money is being used, nevertheless, you are accepting allowing AIG to decide what we'll know, when we'll know it, and under what terms?
Well, forgive me, sir. As I mentioned, I think that Treasury can work with the Federal Reserve, work with the company.
But why haven't they done it? I mean, there's a lot of money out the door, a lot of time has passed, and if they're going to do it, why wouldn't they have done it before the money's out the door rather than after the fact?
Well, Congressman, it's a good question. I think that we're fighting a lot of fires at the same time, and this is a very important issue, and I hear the feedback.
With all due respect, there's a unanimous agreement, I think, on both sides of the aisle that we want to know how the money's being spent. there's an acknowledgement on your part that that will give the taxpayer some basis to have confidence that we're doing something that really is a pretty bitter pill to swallow, but we're doing it for a good reason.
Gentleman's time's expired, but
Thank you.
No, Mr. Kashkari, if you want to respond briefly, and then we're going to go to Mr. Fortenberry.
Well, again, Congressman, I thank you for the comment. You know, we got the message. We'll look into it, sir.